Hello again, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Noble Father podcast. Today is November the 25th, and we're heading into Thanksgiving season. And I am your host, Theophilus. Thank you for joining me. I don't know if this is your first time, but if it is, this is a podcast where I just talk about my life. I share about what it's like to live as an imperfect, noble father. And, it's been a long journey. Definitely one in which I've grown a ton. And, this week I really want to talk about something, with Thanksgiving around the corner, American Thanksgiving around the corner. We've already had ours here in Canada. But one of the things that gets overlooked a lot of times is that, for some of us, those with, intact families, Thanksgiving is something in which can be one of the most joyous occasions in the year, in the calendar year. But something that we take for granted is that there are those out there who do not have that, right? Let's just say they're part of a broken home or split home situation. You got kids custody issues, and some of those relationships being terminated don't bring about, the most amicable situations. And so, what should be a very joyous occasion usually turns into a very lonely occasion. And I really want to just plug this for this week is that if you find yourself lonely for Thanksgiving and you're a dad, and you have nowhere to go, no one to turn to for a Thanksgiving event, this Thursday we have an event for Noble Father where dads can come together in our regular meetup space, and we'll be playing some Discord games together. And this is going to be available for everybody. And so if you're listening to this and you're not a member of our Noble Father private members community, feel free to reach out, and I'd love to connect you to that space. There are a variety of games that can be played in Discord. You could play poker, a variation of Crazy Eights. There's like Settlers of Catan. There's just a bunch of games that can be played, and I feel so strongly about holding community, especially for those that are lost and lonely. Nobody deserves to be alone for Thanksgiving. And so, today's topic, I really want to talk about family traditions. And, you can't really talk about family traditions without really talking about generational curses as well, right? I do feel like the anti-hero of family traditions is generational curses. Where did this come from? Why is it spurring this on? Obviously, with Thanksgiving around the corner, also I'm a moderator of a lot of these Facebook groups for dads, and a lot of the posts that you see leading up to the, for the week, and even for other holidays like Christmas or anniversaries or birthdays or Halloween or whatever event it is at home, that there's always this attachment, this desire to want to perform, right? We live in a very performative society. There's a standard, and I guess with social media and with Instagram and with TikTok or whatever it is that you align to, there's this kind of illusion or this falsehood, this facade of having it all together, right? It's very visually appealing, right? If you watch some of those reels of the families that, have a really nice Christmas tree and, lots of gifts under the tree, and, the house is decorated nicely, that could make somebody feel like I'm missing out, or I don't reach that standard, or I'm not good enough, or just not enough of just not doing good enough for the holidays. And that's an overwhelming pressure, one in which that, it overwhelms people. In particular this morning, just, as I go about post approvals in some of those groups, somebody was posting about how, Thanksgiving is around the corner and they don't know how to cook and they don't know how to prepare a traditional Thanksgiving meal. And, in the back of my mind, it's just like, man, be gracious with yourself. Be nice to yourself, right? Yeah, you might not know how to cook, but that doesn't mean you can't celebrate Thanksgiving. And so today I really want to just talk about, some of the things about tradition, family tradition. And when I think about these topics, I like to answer questions. I like to ask questions and then answer them on the post, on the episode. And so You know, one of the first questions that I, thought about is, why are family traditions important? And I like to think of my own life, right? And give you my experiences. This is a very experiential podcast. Whatever I go through or have gone through, I like to share and talk about those things. Growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of traditions in my family. But it's interesting because in not having traditions, they formed into a tradition as well. So I can't really say that. Growing up, if you haven't heard the first podcast, the first episode is, I grew up in a pastor's home, in a missionary's home. And so at the age of 3, my family moved to Venezuela. That's in South America. And a very foreign nation to my family, right? Both my parents are Chinese. And, if you talk about tradition, you also have to talk about culture. And in my culture, it's a very family centered culture. And so going to a foreign country where I had no family connections, no family roots there, also no kind of citizen roots as well, it was a very different experience for me growing up. We were not very well off, right? Missionaries at the time were funded by the donations and support of fellow believers at church or family or friends. And, we were not well off. And so by not being well off, Christmases and birthdays were not always met with having gifts to unwrap. And so, even to this day, I guess you could say that we don't have a culture of or tradition of gift giving in my immediate family. With my family, like now with my wife and my kids, we've tried to, change those things. One could call that not having gifts is kind of a generational curse, one in which that we could have easily perpetuated and say, no, this isn't how we do celebrations. This is not what the seasons are about. Ultimately, that is true. But the heart of the issue, like where are you going with it? So, in this sense, I will call it a generational curse, and it's one in which we have stepped away from. My wife and I do gift giving, and it's something that we moderate and are very careful about, right? Because it's not about the material possessions, and it's about who and like who you're spending that time with and why you're spending that time with, and not making it out to be this huge thing, and then the rest of the year you're kind of back at each other's throats, right? It's also being intentional with the rest of your life, and I'll go to talk about best practices later on. And when you think about, family traditions, what does it instill, right? Each family is ultimately unique, right? A family with one child would be different from a family with 4, 5, 6 children, right? It's just the difference in tradition. There's just more things you could do with less children. There's more things you could do with more children. There's different dynamics to it, and each family is unique in that structure, and the traditions will be different. The cultures in between will be different, right? Let's just say you are a Caucasian male and you married an Asian woman. Well, the traditions you guys have are going to be very split. You're going to have different traditions. You're going to have Chinese traditions and you have Canadian or American traditions. It's a very normal, unique thing. And so, it instills cohesiveness, right? It instills unity. It instills uniqueness in your family structure. When I was growing up, there was a time where we were so poor, we didn't have any furniture. And I remember one specific trip we took, because my dad was a traveling missionary, would go to different cities in Venezuela to preach to Chinese churches. And this particular city we were staying at, somebody had an empty apartment, like completely empty, like empty to the point where there was no paint on the walls. It was just straight concrete. And, we used one of those blue Tupperware bins, like big tote bins to, and we flipped it over and we would use that as the table for our food. We were just sitting on Coca-Cola bottle, plastic bins, right? The ones that hold the Coca-Cola bins. I don't know if you ever seen those. We would sit on that as our chair and sleep on a mattress that's on the ground. And, the only thing in the house was really just a fan, a mattress, and those blue tote bins. Very humble beginnings. But then you learn to appreciate that. When I think back on those times, I don't see it as a negative thing. We were happy to have one another. We were happy to be in each other's presence, to be able to do life together as a family. And those things were just not important, right? They're ultimately material things. And so for me, it really instilled in me the value of relationship, the value of family, the value of togetherness, right? And so, yeah, that instills kind of this homey feeling, the family feeling, and it set priorities in my life proper, right? I knew it wasn't about the toys and the gifts. I had no idea, no comprehension of gift giving whatsoever. It was just not something that we did growing up. And so, one of the first questions, that I also thought of here was like, how do you form a new family tradition? Given the cultural context, given the situational, circumstantial context, right? If you're struggling financially, right? Obviously, not everybody's going to be able to do super elaborate things like they see on social media, whatever. And really, I'd encourage you to really like take that out. Like, if you can, remove that, scratch that out of your memory. Is that kind of tradition on social media is unrealistic, and it's not for everybody, and it's not everyone is able to do that. And that's not how everybody lives. Like, our family lives very bare bones, and there's not a lot of we don't do super elaborate things. We just enjoy each other's company, and that's really the extent of it. There are a few things that we've done in the past where, they've held on, and they've been good memories that we've been, when we look back on, it's like, wow, that became kind of a family tradition. Some of the things are like trips, right? Little trips that we've taken. Annually, my son's birthday lands in summer. So, for our context in that situation, three of the past 5 years, we've gone to a dinosaur museum, one province over in Alberta. So we've made that drive. And spent time as a family going out to see friends out in Calgary, staying with them and enjoying their company. That has become a tradition for us, almost for his birthday. Another time he was, for his birthday, we were in China. And so, it seems like a lot of trips happen around his birthday. And that's not the same for my daughter, right? My daughter's birthday lands in, on the school year, on the school calendar, and it just doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. It's not saying that, my son is more important than my daughter because we take trips for his birthday. It's just context-wise and circumstantially, it just works out to be that way during summer. Other trips that we've taken, like, when we first purchased the Tesla, right? Suddenly we were able to drive, long distances without, spending too much money. And economically, that just made sense for us. And so, one of the first trips we ever did was out to like Nanaimo on Vancouver Island, and to like Sea Shelton Sunshine Coast here. It's a little peninsula in Vancouver. It's just nice places to be. And just, take a little ferry, right? A little ferry ride that the kids enjoy, right? Stand on the deck and get blown by the wind. And, those served as tradition, right? Little trips that we take together, and it just, when I think about those things, I smile, and my heart is just filled with warmth. Other things like vehicle purchases, right? So I talked about the Tesla, right? And being able to go on long trips together, that formed a bit of a tradition, right? And also, this idea of living from the future, like what are this is something I'm going to talk about later, like the best practices. But like, what is it that you didn't get to do growing up that you wish you had? And what are some of those experiences you want to share with your children, right? Go and do those things. And so, for example, for myself growing up, I was actually really, for whatever reason in Venezuela, I recall drawing pictures of 4-wheel drive trucks, and with big fat wheels on them, and going off-roading and mudding. And I don't know where I got that from. Now that I'm thinking about it, like I don't really know where I got that from. But because I went to go and answer that question, I'm trying to live from the future. What are the experiences that I want with my children while I still have them, right? The premise of 18 summers that we always talk about, you only get 18 summers with your kids. Like that should scare you, right? That should tell you, wow, there's an urgency here, right? And you hear from fathers that and parents who have kids that are older and they're out of the house now, is that a lot of them will tell you, wow, it totally flies by. And so you need to be present and intentional with the time that you're given right now. And so, with my children, I've tried to do that, right? We've been trying to figure out financially, what is the best course of action for us. We are looking to offload the Tesla now and get into a vehicle, since we don't drive so much, like the gas savings just didn't make sense for us. But now, getting into the 4Runner that we purchased recently and catching up on maintenance on it and fixing certain parts on it, I've really used that as an experience to, get my fingers dirty, get grease under my nails, learn with my son as well. But also, like, there's an idea of wanting to take my kids out four-wheeling. My son has already started asking about it, going into the woods, into the forest, and places where the Tesla can't take us, and creating memories there, going fishing with my kids, visiting these natural hot springs that are all around the beautiful province that we're in. Like, we live here, and we haven't really been present to that. We haven't fully explored this place. And yet we, are so eager to go somewhere else. And so, kind of that's the thinking behind it. Well, I'm trying to form family traditions. I want to go off-roading with my kids. I want to go fishing with my kids. I want to go to places where the Tesla won't be able to take us. These are all parts of forming that tradition. Other things like family potlucks growing up, my family, extended family, like my mom's side, all her sisters, and my mom has 4 sisters and 2 brothers. And so they all have their individual families, and now all have individual, grandkids and what have you. My grandma used to bring our families all together, and we'd have a huge potluck for, Chinese New Year, for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, whatever it is. And just spending that time together, I'm sure everybody hopefully has experienced that to some extent. That's really how you form them. It's what's present, right? It could also be with friends. It doesn't have to be with family. Let's just say a friend who doesn't have good relationships with their family. Well, bring them together for one of the years, right? Get together and do a potluck. You bring some food, I bring some food. We all share and we all eat together. We're all happy together, and spend that time together. Go out and figure out what that context is for yourself and go form it. If you want to be alone for Thanksgiving or for holidays, go do something with your family. It doesn't matter what you eat for food. It doesn't matter what you do. It's so much as who you're doing it with and why you're doing it. And so, getting to the point where I want to talk about some of these best practices and elaborate on some of these, because, when I think about family traditions, these are things that are that I adhere to and try to do my best to stick to. And so these are, let me see, 1, 2, 4 practices, best practices that I have for when it comes to family traditions and talking about family traditions. Number 1 is, like, don't force something to happen, right? Every person is different with different leanings and passions. And, when I think about this, it's, I think about the kids, right? If you have a kid who's, it has a physical disability, I'm not saying it's impossible to do this, but, don't set a tradition of going on a hike, or something, right? Like, that's just inherent. Or if your son is not into sports and then you take them to go do sports, that doesn't make much sense, right? Every context is unique in the sense that, if your kid is into checking out museums, go take them, go check out some museums, go do things that align to your kids. Don't force something to happen that you're in that sense, you're being too attached to a result. And that's number 2, right? Is, be unattached to a specific result, right? Like I said earlier, if you're watching Instagram reels or TikTok videos of people celebrating certain traditions like Thanksgiving, dinners with, full course meal, turkey done up perfectly, decorations all on point, family and friends all smiles, and Like don't adhere yourself to that standard, right? Not everybody can do that. Like I'm born a Canadian. My wife is from China. She was born there and raised there. To expect my family to have a traditional turkey meal that when I never had that growing up is unrealistic, right? What is something we both adhere to? Well, we both really like hot pot. Well, why don't we do a hot pot together? Why don't we invite some friends who don't do traditional turkey Thanksgivings and just do a hot pot together? Whatever it is. Like, and when you go to do it, like, be unattached. Just be open to the magic. Just let magic unfold. You don't have to, it's not a performance. And if the people that you're inviting are disappointed by what you do, or how you've done it, or the quality of what you've done, they're too attached. And I would recommend maybe distancing yourself from these people, is not inviting them over again, because nobody needs that pressure, and nobody can perform a perfect dinner. And if your standard is somebody else, you'll never measure up. And so just release yourself from that and be okay with the fact that, oh, we had fried chicken for Thanksgiving. We went out and ordered it, and that's what we did. And we formed that little tradition. And it wasn't turkey, but it was special to us. And that's all that ultimately matters. And, third thing that I would say for best practice is, like, get messy, right? Is that there's magic in the mess. And so, let's just say you wanted to attempt one year to make turkey. And so thank the Lord for things like YouTube and Google, because whatever thing instructional you want to do, learn how to cook a Thanksgiving. You could even look up budget turkey dinner. You can look up simple turkey dinner on Google, and I'm sure you'll find guides on how to do a celebration that is easy and not cumbersome and not too hard. And, and just look at it like not a performative thing, but look at it as an opportunity to learn together. And if you mess up, hey, that's good. You messed up together and you learned together. I'm sure your kids would enjoy learning how to, make a turkey, watching those videos together and figuring out how to stuff them, how to do them in different ways. Or maybe it's learning how to make a meal together. It doesn't even have to be turkey. Find something. Oh, let's learn how to make fried chicken. Get messy doing it, right? Involve your kids, right? Show them how to bread them. Show them how to, cut it, or whatever it is. Make an experience out of that. And I'm sure you do that enough, you're going to form a tradition. Your kids are going to remember that one time that dad took the time to show us how to make fried chicken, right? We made a huge mess in the kitchen, and yet we had a great time. And now your kid has a passion for cooking, right? You've given them an experience. You're unattached. You're just happy, having fun, right? Rather than holding on to some specific idea of what fried chicken should look like, or Thanksgiving dinner should look like. Like, release yourself from that. Like, come at this with simplicity. Have grace with yourself. And it's okay if it doesn't look the standard way. What is the standard way? If you think that a cookie cutter experience is going to make you happy, like, I'd encourage you to look deep into yourself and ask yourself why it is that would make you happy or bring you joy. It's really not about those things. And so, the very last thing, last best practice is, like, and this is a very important one, right, is to normalize the essence of the holiday in everyday life, not the other way around. Normalize the essence of the holiday in everyday life and not the other way around. And so a good example of this is Thanksgiving, right? Get in the habit of Thanksgiving the rest of the year, not just one singular day of the calendar year. Is that you normalize just Thanksgiving every other day as well. Is that, yes, it is important to do and celebrate those things one time out of the year, but it's something that is important to remember every single day of your life. Be grateful for the people that you are with and that you have around you. Be grateful for the things that you have. Be grateful for the material possessions you have. Be grateful that you have you're able to do anything for Thanksgiving, and this is something that my children are very good at, and I'm not sure if it's something that we instilled in them, but my son and my daughter like to wake up in the morning and like to wake up in the mornings and like greet each other with a hug and a kiss and say good morning and a hug, like, and we also have made it a tradition. Obviously it's not a tradition, it's something that we adhere to, is, you know, saying grace before our meals. And so it's a culture. You're setting a culture of Thanksgiving and a culture of appreciating one another. It should be special all 364 other days of the year, and you should be grateful for those days as well, and not just because it's Thanksgiving and that 1 week at most that you're now thinking about why you're thankful. Is to really normalize the essence of the holiday the rest of your life rather than just on those days. And I really feel like that would, you know, go that much further, right? It also makes it that much more special. You know, that perspective on life is not something that we do very often, right? You know, and I really share these things as a person that is imperfect. There are days that is challenging for me. And I'm just trying my best really to break those curses, right? Break those things that I never got and live from that place of being present. And so I noticed that I've gone 26 minutes with this podcast. I didn't expect it to go this long, but really, I want to say how grateful I am for you to listen and tune into this podcast. I'm thankful for the support some of you have shown me, and man, how diehard you are to continue showing up for me and to support me on this. I can't do this alone, and I very much appreciate it. And so if you could do me a favor, you know, share this episode with your friends, with your family, those who need to listen, and be reminded that it's not about the gifts. It's not about the facade of the holidays. It's not any kind of performative thing. You know, share this with them to release them from that pressure and to, make the holidays that much more special. Again, if you're a father that's going to be alone this Thanksgiving, please reach out. I'd love to connect you with our little Thanksgiving games night that we're doing for the fathers community. And, a great way to be in community. We'll talk around the games and just do life together. And if you do plan on showing up, remember, be completely unattached to any kind of a result and just be open to the magic. And so hopefully you guys have a great Thanksgiving. And if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving where you're at, hey, have a great week. And thank you for tuning in again. Remember, we're not promised tomorrow. And so be present and stay noble. Bye for now.